Recognize Ranking Member Meeks.
Thank you. And I actually don't disagree with almost anything that Mr. McCall has said. You know, in fact, that's a big concern of mine because what we've seen before us is not reform. It's abandoning decades of bipartisan support for centering human rights and democracy in our foreign policy, without consultation, without engagement, and without any regard for Congress's constitutional role as a co-equal branch of government. To this day, Secretary Rubio refuses to follow the law and consult with Congress. And we have no reason to believe that will change. In the weeks ahead, we fully expect him to endorse the next chapter of Project 2025, which will closing hundreds of critical offices and potentially dozens of overseas posts, gutting the department's workforce, and slashing the budget, all of which will leave America weaker and more isolated. In fact, China and Russia will continue to celebrate, as they've done so almost every day since January 20th. And you know, what Mr. McCall said, I have a long track record working with any administration that wants to strengthen our national security and works in good faith towards that end. But obviously, this is not business as usual. Donald Trump has taken a wrecking ball to our foreign policy, treated our allies as adversaries and our adversaries as allies, threatening to invade some of those allies, and launched a trade war that is hurting our economy and our constituents. So I would love more than anything to have a good faith effort to reauthorize the State Department, and I would welcome discussions to that end. But you know what? The State Department officials came to brief staff earlier this week, only after but it was after their reorganization had been set into motion. Programs were cut, and after the firing notices were started going out. That's not consultation. That's, to me, insulting. And while I want to thank the chairman and my majority colleagues for arranging that belated briefing, Secretary Rubio's messengers could not even answer basic questions, like what offices should be closed, or how they arrived at a 15% domestic staffing reduction. So I think that there should be more consultations. Let me just ask you these questions. You can answer yes or no. Do you believe Congress must be meaningfully consulted on major state reorganization or changes to USAID, including ending the vast majority of congressionally appropriated foreign assistance? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And another yes or no. Do you believe that sweeping changes like this, especially on items mandated in law, should it be done by an executive order, or should you have to come to Congress?
There are legal issues here, Congressman, that I am not competent to get into, but again, I'll go with my first answer. When appropriate and when it's under law, Congress must be consulted.
Mr. Hill?
Yes, if you want a sustainable, decision, I think it requires legislation and consultation with Congress.
I believe it absolutely requires consultation with Congress and a clear-cut connection between the ends and the means, which I am not seeing in this plan.
And also, on top of all that, Secretary Rubio's cuts already underway, and the White House is reportedly readying a rescission of more than $9 billion from the state and foreign operations budget. Would the practical impact of these cuts on our ability to advance U.S. interests globally be significant, or would they be detrimental?
I'd have to see what the specifics are, Congressman.
I agree with Jim's answer. I'd want to see the details. I do believe that an organization the size of the State Department could definitely use some serious reform.
I come out differently on this based on what I've seen so far in press reporting. A 50% cut in state's operational budget combined with the 80% plus cut in foreign assistance from USAID. I think this has devastating consequences with respect to our own security and prosperity and our ability to project leadership. I would just note that the PRC is already filling that gap.
That's my next question.
And we are seeing China increase its diplomatic spending. I've seen by over 8% for 2025, over 6% last year. And so again, to what end are we retreating from the field when our greatest geopolitical challenger is doubling down?
Okay. Now, I want, just indulge the chairman just to have an answer with the two of you about that what was just mentioned about our ability to compete with China, significant or detrimental?
I'll draw on an article in The Economist from March. And The Economist, as I think you all know, is a very internationalist, globalist, engagement-oriented platform. The death of foreign aid. It says that 3/4 of all foreign aid is in development, economic, political assistance, and it basically says there is very little evidence that this produces any results, and goes on to say the idea that aid buys soft power is unconvincing too. Now, anything in print can be challenged, but I would have to say my own experience on the ground, beyond humanitarian assistance, which is critical, beyond security assistance, equally critical, all of the things we're doing to try to change societies, whether to compete with the Chinese or push back on the Russians, I haven't seen a whole lot of success, and I've been responsible for some of the largest ones, Congressman.
Thank you.
I'll just draw one chapter of my experience in Pakistan as ambassador there. I inherited, the Kerry Lugar-Berman aid pipeline, which, frankly, in hindsight, I think, was an experiment that proved to not have really succeeded in achieving foreign policy goals. There are some good things that were done with it, but for the most part, the Pakistanis didn't want the assistance. They blocked a lot of it, and I don't think that if you had a objective measurement that it really changed either the growth of violent extremism in that part of the world or the cooperation of the Pakistani authorities to U.S. policy. In contrast, the Chinese were spending $50 to $60 billion in Belt and Road Initiative programs in Pakistan at the same time. They got a lot of credit for it. But over time, it turned out, as people discovered, these were not grants like ours. They were loans. And the business plans didn't make any sense. There's a lot of favoritism and corruption in it. And now they have a debt overhang that they can't deal with. So the Chinese approach also soured. So I'm not sure that I want to, while not ignoring the fact that resources matter, that the amount of money we're spending versus what the Chinese are spending in any given country may be a starting point for a conversation. I don't know that it necessarily reflects an outcome of the way to measure exactly the best way the United States can influence behavior, because aid does not change policies. It can enable a partner who already is in agreement with us to do the things we want. But dangling aid isn't going to make somebody do things that they don't otherwise feel is in their national interest. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate those answers. We now
Could
recognize.
is there time for